Moving into our next session on the topic Entrepreneurship in Space, a Timely Opportunity. Our speaker this afternoon is Pranit Mehta, co-founder and vice president, business development, GalaxEye Space. Pranit Mehta is the co-founder and vice president, business development at GalaxEye Space, as I just mentioned, a deep tech startup building India's first private constellation of Earth imaging satellites. Ladies and gentlemen, please extend a warm welcome to Pranit Mehta.
Hello, everybody. Good evening. Firstly, thank you, NASCOM, and to everybody here. Glad to have this opportunity and standing before you guys. Secondly, I have no idea if I can do justice to the session that just happened. So thank you so much, sir, for the amazing session and all of your insights. I will take that on in the whole space language, but in a smaller, a more specific, and a more real-time problem, right? So I'm one of the founders at GalaxEye. GalaxEye, as introduced, is we're a space startup spun out of IIT Madras. I'll take you through how space is as we see, which is essentially a one-slide summary of what Sir just mentioned, and how we are picking one problem and how us as a group of technology enthusiasts, as a group of innovators, need to pick up such problems. Space technology, if you just hear these two words, right, it's huge. There could be n number of things that can come on, right? All the way from our solar system to the space station and so on and so forth, right? There's a bunch of things that you can just keep going on and on. That is worth $425 billion as an economy. While you have agencies like NASA, ISRO, and a bunch of space organizations globally doing their role, there is also a commercial economy that's being built around space. And that is $425 billion. We at GalaxEye are picking one problem out of this $425 billion economy, which is satellite imagery. What comes to our mind when we think of satellite imagery? Why do we need satellite imagery? Right? Very typically, my personal experience has been all of us have, at some point in our lives, opened Google Maps, went to the satellite view, and just zoomed into our homes to see what our home looks like. But there's a lot more to it, right? You could get buildings that are in very weird shapes. You could watch the Thanksgiving parade at New York just using a satellite imagery. And you can actually, if you zoom in, you can find people walking on the road. Or you could get abstract wallpapers for your phones and laptops. Right? These are stuff you can do, but is that all? Right? There's always a bigger cost, which is the sustainability angle here. So United Nations, as we all know, had put out a bunch of sustainability goals, 17 sustainability development goals. And you'd be surprised to know that space technology can impact all 17 of those SDGs, and 14 of them directly. Space is the only technology that has that capability. Right? That's the power of what we're dealing with. Right? That's how important, that's how critical, that's how strategic the whole space ecosystem is. All of that being said, why would we care, right? Like us sitting on these chairs, sitting at our homes and offices, how do we benefit from space, right? It's a question that we've always asked. I mean, it's good, we celebrate, we support, we grow, but is there something that I can take out? There's a lot of business applications. In the interest of time, I won't go into a lot of depth, but it ranges all the way from knowing where mines are located, to estimating yield for agricultural farms, to being able to track the supply chain of how much exports and imports are we doing of coal, for example. There's a lot of defense applications. For instance, how do you know what's happening in Israel at the moment, or what's happening in Gaza at the moment, what's happening in Ukraine at the moment, right? All of these, there have been times where humans can't physically be present, but you need that information. So all of these intelligence, the remote sensing, is where satellite imagery comes in. we realized the potential and jumped onto this opportunity. When I say we, so this is myself and my founders, all of us from IIT Madras who have built Hyperloop in the past. So how many of you guys here have heard of Hyperloop before? That's a fair crowd. So Hyperloop was a transportation that was brought about by Elon Musk, and back in 2019, he hosted a global competition for student teams to build Hyperloop technologies. We built India's first Hyperloop technology, which is now being scaled up for real-life applications with the help of Indian Railways. So we were the team that built that, was the first functional Hyperloop in the whole of India. And such technologies is what we want to be building. And on that note, we can all, for sure, experience a Hyperloop journey by end of this decade. So fingers crossed for that. This is what motivates us to be doing what we are doing. So when I talk about the SpaceX journey back in 2019, we were part of that competition, the global Hyperloop competition by Elon Musk, and we were the only team from Asia to reach the finals. So we finished in the top 10 out of 1,600 teams. What we bring back are two memories, right? And that's something that we speak of day in and out. One is this picture that, hey, you know what, we've met, we've spoken with, and actually discussed technology with Elon Musk. And second is a visual of us displaying our technology in the US with an Indian flag that no other team had out there. And we know there's a lot of Indians outside. So that pride is what keeps us going there, where you build technologies in India for the world. That's where all of this started. Now, when you speak of technologies, right, there are companies like Uber, DoorDash, Lyft, Swiggy, Ola, and a bunch of these things who rely on GPS as technology. But did you know that there's a bunch of companies like insurance folks like Allianz, Lloyds, ExxonMobil, Shell, Farmers Edge, a bunch of such companies globally that rely on satellite imagery? You would not even know there's a satellite that's up there capturing this Radisson Blu hotel right now. For what application? Could be just mapping the urban development in Bangalore. There's so many such use cases and applications that satellite imagery brings. But in India, to really use satellite imagery, there's problems that only we understand, right? It's not as simple as you pick up a Western technology and be like, hey, let's use that in India. That problem is how satellite imagery exists today, right? What I'll be doing for the next few slides is essentially telling you the problem that we are solving and why it is important for such innovations to come out of India in specific. There are two kinds of satellite imageries that are available out there. One is visual imagery, which is more like what you see on satellite images on Google Maps and stuff. And the other is radar imagery. Quick fun facts: maps that you see on Google are at least a 6 month to 1 year old, and in a lot of cases, even 2.5 years old. Right? Like you would not know a building that's being constructed next to you actually visible on Google Maps. So can you use that for a business application? Definitely not, right? Maybe in a very few cases out there. If you want real-time images, you put up cameras in space, which is what agencies like ISRO, NASA, and a few companies in the US have done. The problem is clouds. Now, when you listen clouds, you know that, yeah, clouds are obvious. Like, why didn't we think about it? In the US, clouds cover only about 40 to 50% of the areas. In India, clouds cover 70 to 80% of the areas. That's how much cloud coverage we deal with. Simply because of how we are placed geographically, our, a lot of external environmental conditions and so on. Which is where there's the whole technology of radar imaging satellites, where sensors put out signals that can penetrate through smoke and clouds, which is, in normal terms, more like X-rays or CT scan. Like, you can penetrate through skin but not through bones, right? So you get a visual, you understand muscles and a number of such things, where you have that penetration capability. What do these images actually look and feel like, and why is this not really applicable to India? Satellites have been built by NASA, have been built by ISRO, they are up in space. But what stops us, right? This is what a visual image looks like. But that's if you're very lucky, right? And that luck is like 20% of the times. This is what an actual image looks like, covered with clouds. So if you really want to understand how many ships are out there at the dock, you can't use a visual image, which is where you jump into radar images, and this is what a radar image looks like. Now, for example, how do you know if objects in the center, are they ships, are they port extensions, the docks, or whatever they can be, right? That's why we cannot sit and say that, hey, seeing an X-ray, this is a problem, which is why you need experts. And that is the problem with radar imagery as well today. As you can see, these are two very complementary sensors. A visual sensor, which you just see and say, hey, that's a ship, that's a home, that's a car, that's a tank, and so on. But it's not available. Whereas a radar image, it is available 100% because it can penetrate through clouds, but it's just not intuitive, right? So you have to bring them together to solve for India, because if you just get that availability, you don't have enough people. In India, there's literally 3 agencies in the country who can build radar imagers, who can analyze radar imagers, and actually get insights. 1, ISRO, 2, DRDO, and 3, GalaxEye, which is us. And that capability, us having done that, which I'll take you through how we achieved that whole story, is bringing these 2 sensors together on a single satellite. So we are launching the world's first multi-sensor imaging satellite here based out of Bangalore for the world, right? So we are a fully Indian company building all of this here with the support of ISRO, DRDO, and a bunch of such agencies with their experience. And thanks to our country's space heritage, we are making this a commercial opportunity to leverage our whole space history of how we actually benefit day in and out of this. This is what an image would look like. And this is irrespective of clouds, irrespective of smoke and whatnot. It's where you have a clear image. I'll take a very quick case, spend about 10-15 seconds, where if you just picked up a spectral image, which is just a normal image, like RGB, infrared, and so on, you know that there's a fire happening, right? So because you can see smoke. That's how human eyes see things. Whereas radar images, because of their very physics nature, they can penetrate through smoke, and hence they'll tell you the level of damage that's happened on ground, but you do not know if the fire is actually happening right now. Which is where you bring these 2 together and solve for real-life problems. Right? So just having sensors in space does not mean you can use it. Right? There's a whole usability and an operations angle to it. This is one such example, and there's a bunch of such cases. We've done analysis for floods in Chennai, in UP, in Delhi, and we've been working on a lot of such applications where we adapt to climate change, right? And that is our root of why we want this to scale. Climate change is inevitable, right? Like, take it or not, someday we are going to be facing it. It's like slow poison. We are having catastrophes frequent than ever before, which is like once every week almost right now. So can you stop floods? Can you stop hurricanes? Can you stop forest fires? Not in our hands. How do we adapt to it? How do we live through it? Is really having those technologies that can tackle climate change. Versus fighting nature, you adapt to nature. And that is purely the idea of where this implements. So we are building a platform where you can access our own satellites, get this imagery, and that's the whole business angle to it. I would spend a couple of minutes as I wrap on our journey, which is what instills the pride and confidence for me to come and stand before all of you. When I say 3 agencies, how did we become the 3rd one was purely owing to this. Right? And it's not like we took 10 years. Right? We don't have the leverage to take 10 years. We're a startup. Started in April 2020, where a bunch of us got together, the founders, we got together and started discussing, hey, we know satellite imagery is powerful, but how do we use it? And that's where we started looking around, speaking to people, and realized this whole angle of availability and usability is what is stopping people from using satellite imagery. Like, did you know a company like Adani Transmission, for example, like not quoting any specific, but any company, right, even Tata Power or Power Grid or whoever, can use and uses, even today, geospatial imagery, satellite imagery, drone imagery, and so on, to monitor their transmission lines. Right? Companies like Dubai Ports, DP World, right, Adani Ports, and a lot of these, even government ports, use geospatial imagery to have continuous information. Right? So such ideas is what came in. We did our own customer discovery, worked with a small bunch of grants, got ourselves incubated, and made some first procurements. Right? So we ended up buying all the small boxes from sites like Amazon and doing our own radar-based testing. Then we realized that the problem was real, the business was, it was an actual opportunity to tap into, and we incorporated ourselves, which is something that I would put off as a very strong learning, where you just don't build a startup for the sake of it. Right? We spent more than a year realizing if the problem was real, and then built a startup. Then we incorporated ourselves. So post-incorporation, we did testing, not in a fancy office, but we had rented a home in the outskirts of Chennai. So this was all at IIT Madras. In the outskirts of the city, we rented a home, and that terrace was our lab. So we did our rail testing, a bunch of such system tests, got our first employees, first interns, visited some conferences, and really figured out what the international journey looked like, right? What the international technology landscape felt like, and started building our satellite technologies. India has built satellites under the leadership of ISRO, right? But commercially, we're the first company to be doing that, right? So like we also heard in the previous journey, sometimes it's great to be first, but you're also alone. Right? That's what we felt. So we went on to get a lot of guidance, a lot of advisory. And what we understood was we had to de-risk technologies. Putting up a satellite in space costs anywhere from $5 to $10 million for a good size satellite. And that's roughly like 40 to 80 crores. That's what it takes. And if there's very small hiccups of even saying that you're not able to communicate with the satellite, that's literally money burnt up in air. You can't access it. You can't go to space and just tighten up a screw. That's not how this works. Which is why we decided to de-risk our technology, built an aerial system to be able to really work with such deep technologies, where you don't just be like, hey, let me experiment in space. That can't work. Why do we think space missions at ISRO take years? How do we know that we're going to be launching a mission in 2027? It's because we've already started working for it. Right? That's how long a time it takes to be able to do it. So we had a bunch of memories like this. We've raised a couple of rounds of funding, done a lot of analytics, done a lot of business. We are looking to take that to the future by putting up a whole constellation of satellites where you can map the world every 3 hours. So if you see on Google Maps, you will know in the next 3 hours what's the change that's happening. Right? And that is a lot of commercial applications that can be tackled. That is what we are aiming to build. One final bit before I wrap my presentation is when we deal with such technologies, you de-risk them. Right? And that is our strongest strength, plain and simple. We built a drone-based payload, which, as the only private entity in the country to have built these imaging radars, having built this, I would have loved to bring that here, but we're currently ongoing some testing on site. But this is what an on-field test, which is happening today from a previous test, looks and feels like. So that's a version of our payload where we calibrate, get data, and take it to site. Thank you. This is the opportunity to build in India for the world, right? Technologies like these see a lot of applications like you would have seen in the visuals as well. Space, the space literally, is hotter than ever before. India having privatized space laws, the recent success with ISRO and a bunch of such things. This is the opportunity to pick up what we have as a country, as a heritage, take that to real life applications, solve problems, and also make a business, right? Like not just do research, but actually take it as a commercial opportunity and scale. So that, ladies and gentlemen, is my time. Thank you so much and pleasure being here.
On that note, we'd like to thank Pranit Mehta for that brilliant presentation. I'd like to request Sakshi to please come forward and present with a small token of our appreciation. Once again, Pranit, we'd like to thank you for joining us for this event.